Oil, the most important commodity the world has ever discovered. It powers your vehicles, every single tractor in the farm, every single truck that moves the food and the resources to and fro across the world, every single boat, every single fleet, every single jet, airplane, all military vehicles, it's all powered by oil, every one of them. And the demand for oil continues to grow. The left has tried to stop oil, has tried to demonize oil. It's tried to make promises that oil is being replaced by green energy, and they were unsuccessful, and it hasn't worked. And they are silent as electric cars are sitting on lots not being purchased. And as these large auto manufacturers are canceling contracts to build EVs, and as these car dealerships are trying to send these cars back because nobody's buying them, they are silent. And oil prices are reaching highs of $90-something a barrel as the SPR is empty, causing security concerns here in America. And as the Middle East continues to grow in war, purposely trying to put upward pressure on oil prices. Here we are in a democracy that is anti-oil, causing oil divestment. They're insane. They're crazy. And with inflation being at an all-time high, it's even more likely to put upward pressure on oil. Every single oil well being drilled is affected by inflation. Every oil driller has a team, and that team has to eat. That team has to power their vehicles to get there with gasoline. Every single drilling rig, every single completion rig, all the materials, everything needed is affected by inflation in the price of energy, gasoline, oil. And it's becoming more expensive to drill for oil. And then oil prices are not going up to the levels that they should. They should be much higher. But you have these market manipulators. You have BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard doing these market sell-offs when they know that if they hold the line on the markets, they can make so much more money. But instead of making a lot more money on the commodity, on the futures of oil, they sell. And that causes the price of a barrel of crude to drop. And they do it over and over again because they're more interested in beating up oil because they know it's the commodity that will never give up because it's the most demanded product the world has. It's more demanded than coffee. It's more demanded than gold. It's more demanded than silver. I mean, in an apocalypse, do you want to have gold or do you want to have oil? Here's the deal. Gold, if you walk around with a pocket full of gold in an apocalypse, people will shoot you dead for that. You're better off having bullets, whiskey, and bread with a gas tank full of gasoline. And if you think that silver and gold is going to save you in those times, they're not. During times when America's doing well and there's high inflation, gold is a good thing to have because you could liquefy it. You could sell it. But in the event that there's an apocalypse, it's not going to save you. And so oil powers our wars. It's what keeps inflation low. It's what prevents people from starving. The countries that don't have enough energy, statistically speaking, more people die. Oil actually saves people, but they've demonized it. They've made everyone believe that oil causes cancer. Oil is causing hurricanes. Oil is causing the temperatures to rise, and it's destroying the country. And then they demonized it. They divested from it without a solution. They said that we have a solution, green energy. Hey, it's here to save the day. But where are you, green energy? What have you done? They've spent trillions of dollars and only reducing the demand for fossil fuels by 1%. And that all those trillions of dollars that they spent, it made people very rich, but it caused a tremendous amount of inflation. And now oil prices are higher. If they had focused on developing more oil, I mean, we are abundant in natural gas. We have such an abundance of natural gas. They could be creating vehicles that could consume natural gas. But instead, they are going all green. Oil is a non-renewable resource, but neither is lithium. And what do you think powers all of these vehicles? Cobalt, lithium, these batteries. And then once those batteries are used for 10 years, how do they dispose of them? It's a nightmare. And so moving forward, are we going to finally stop divesting from fossil fuels, stop divesting from oil, or are we going to continue down this road? And so either way, the demand for oil has continued to grow. Oil prices today are lower than they should. Inflation is causing it, making it more expensive to develop for oil and gas. And so these oil and gas companies, they can't last forever under these situations. There's many oil companies that are just can't afford to drill like they used to. It's more expensive to develop in Texas and different parts. You look at the infrastructure in Texas, we are almost at max capacity for these natural gas lines. There are oil companies that are paying to have their natural gas go down the line just so they could produce the oil, because natural gas is a byproduct of oil. You can't have one without the other. And so in order for you to produce the oil, the natural gas has to come out with it. You can't prevent it from coming out and just produce the oil. Well, you can't flare it. Thanks to new technology, satellites in the air are the hall monitor of the oil and gas industry, and they tell on you. And then you get hit with these huge fines if you're emitting too much natural gas in the air. That's called natural gas flaring. You can't do that like you used to. So you're forced to not be able to produce your oil. You're forced to shut it down until you have a solution. Until you have a natural gas line running from your oil well all the way to the refinery, you can't produce your oil. So there's a tremendous amount of wells that are offline simply because of stranded natural gas. And nobody's going to spend millions and millions of dollars, possibly billions, to run a gas line all the way from an oil well all the way to a refinery. So we have many wells that can't even come online right now. We have many wells that are in congested, trafficked areas where there's more natural gas than there is pipelines. And so what do? They cut back their production. Instead of producing 1,000 barrels of oil, they're only producing 500. And so our infrastructure needs a massive upgrade, massive. And the shale industry is declining. Shale oil and gas, we went from 6 million barrels a day under George W. Bush, and then we grew to 13 million under Donald Trump. Most of that excess oil came from shale, about 7 million of it. And that 7 million barrels a day that we're producing from shale right now has a decline of 45% a year. That means they have to drill a massive amount of oil just to stay at the current numbers. Well, they're not drilling like they used to. They're not being invested in like they used to. They are on the decline. We're going to start seeing a decline in shale. And the Middle East is doing whatever they can to keep prices of oil higher. I'm telling you right now, here in the next coming months, oil prices are going to go to levels we've never seen. And if you don't believe that, you need to wake up. Oil is the most precious commodity there is. And I've had many people say, well, what happens if Trump gets in office? Oil prices are going to come down. Listen, when Trump came in office, we were already, starting with George W. Bush and Obama, we were already on the path of this shale revolution. The central banking system were giving billions and billions of dollars to the shale companies to drill, baby, drill. Well, first off, the banks are divesting from oil and gas. And secondly, we developed assets, shale assets, oil and gas assets that should have taken decades in months because they became so efficient at developing and they had so much cash to do it. And that's why they grew so quickly. Well, now you got these massive oil companies with massive amounts of rigs that could drill very quickly, but they don't have enough resource to go after because most of the tier one assets have been developed. So let's say Trump comes in office and he removes all the red tape. Let's develop. Well, what are these guys going to develop and where are they going to get their cash from? I mean, with the interest rates being where they are, with the inflation issues that we have, and with the fact that we have tier two assets, and most of the smaller shell companies have been bought out. Now you got Chevron and these big boys. Pioneer was bought out. The big boys, they have more capital controls. They drill less. They've realized that if we reduce the amount of capital we spend on developing, on drilling for oil, We give more money back to the shareholders. It will increase the value of our stock. So in other words, these smart guys in suits and these AI robots figured out a way to drill less and make more money, and they're an oil company. But it's actually really smart because that way they don't have to come out and say, hey, it's not profitable to drill. Hey, these tier 2 assets, we produce less oil for more money right now. So it's more economically feasible to do it this way, but they're not going to come out and tell you that. Shale is not profitable. I'll tell you right now. I've invested in shale projects dating back to 2008. They don't work. And I know I have geologist friends and that have drilled thousands of shale wells, and they'll tell you very few of them are profitable. It's just too expensive to develop shale oil and gas. And I'll never change my mind on that. Unless they invented technology that changes things, it's just how it is. How are we going to be able to stay under this model moving forward? Trump can't fix the problem. I'm here to tell you the only way to fix the issue is for oil prices to go up. Oil prices go up, it becomes more profitable to develop. We could produce more oil and oil output will increase. But it's a finite resource because the cheaper energy becomes, the cheaper oil becomes, the more oil is consumed. And you have people in the Middle East that are building these cheap cars just to increase the demand for oil. You have people in the Middle East that are starting wars to increase the price of a barrel of crude. Iran's not going to stop. Houthi rebels aren't going to stop. Hezbollah's not going to stop. These guys are doing whatever they can to help push oil prices up. And so on the other side, on the flip side, we drill less oil because demand drops. Let's say we have a major financial collapse. Okay. The demand for oil drops. We drill less. We invest less money in oil. And now there's not enough oil to even keep up with that demand. That's been something that's happened. But for the first time in history, shale oil and gas is declining. And for the first time, we don't have any more places to drill. We in the 1920s to the early 2000s, it was drill, baby, drill in conventional oil. And then they went offshore because we were running out of places to drill. And we went from 8 million barrels a day in the 80s down to 5 million barrels a day under George W. Bush. And then we made shale discoveries, and it was drill, baby, drill. And we went from 5 million a day up to 13 million barrels a day. Well, that's why oil prices under Trump dropped, because we to add 7 million barrels a day of output out of the blue like that. Nobody expected it. The markets didn't know how to handle it. It was an influx of oil that came very quickly. Well, now demand has grown, outstripping the 7 million barrels a day that we added. And so the markets have adjusted. And so it's as if shale never was discovered because the demand is high enough to consume all that oil. So now where are we going to make those discoveries? And shale is on the decline. Are you hearing me? And the Middle East is going to do whatever they can to keep oil prices higher. The Saudi prince, they are saying they need almost $100 oil to balance their books. There was a time when all they needed was 60, but now they need almost 100. Why? Inflation. It's cost more money to develop. It's more expensive, guys. Exports are a lot more expensive. If you don't think that what the Houthi rebels and what Iran and what's happening in the shipping lanes doesn't affect the price to ship oil, insurance companies to insure these oil export vehicles becomes more expensive, affecting everything. And things are starting to catch up to the price of a barrel of crude. Right now, oil is not high enough. It's not expensive enough. Russia needs it to fund their war. Iran needs it to fund their wars. Saudi Arabia needs it to fund their countries. The Middle East, everybody in the Middle East needs oil prices to go up in order to fund their countries. America needs oil prices to go up for it to be more profitable. So if oil prices come down, oil prices will come up because it's only going to shut down even more oil development. And so the damage has already been done. If Trump comes in office, removes all the red tape, removes the stigmatism of oil as a cigarette and it's evil and everything else, let's drill, baby, drill, it's too late. And so I could foresee oil prices going to levels we've never seen before. I think I'm excited to be in this oil business. I'm not excited about how it affects America, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to get used to high energy prices. Oil is a finite resource. It's non-renewable. Gold, it sits in people's vaults. They find it and they put it in banks. They put it in vaults, but you don't burn it. Oil, you burn it. Once it's burned, it's gone. You got to drill for more. And we're making less oil field discoveries, and people are telling us, hey, we just keep finding more oil. Well, at the end of the day, you can't, let's say there's an infinite amount of places to drill. The time it takes to discover oil, the time it takes to drill for the oil, the time it takes to get it online, it's already too late. There's just not enough time. And shell companies, they've learned their lesson. They drilled, baby drilled. They built their companies to this massive level, and all of a sudden they had to file for bankruptcy because they grew too quickly and they developed too much oil, and they drilled themselves out of a job. They caused oil prices to go down, and their AI robots and their guys in suits are going to prevent them from making that same mistake. You can't rely on shale American companies for multiple reasons. They are not going to drill, baby drill and make that same mistake. And also, they have tier 2 assets. Their assets are not good enough to do what they did. It's kind of like Mike Tyson. He's not the same man. He is not going to fight like he did back in the 1980s and early 90s. He is not the same man. Shale is not the same man. Shale is going to get beat. They either need to find a new asset, which it doesn't exist, or we need to jack up the price of a barrel of crude. Either way, eventually things are going to settle and things are going to correct themselves. And I truly believe that we're going to see $100 oil again, and it's going to stay there for a long time. Otherwise, companies are going to crash. Oil companies are going to fall apart. Okay. And so, as an oil man, I made my first oil investment 30 years ago. It is becoming even more difficult to find prosperous oil deals. Very difficult. And I look at hundreds of deals, and financially, they'll bring me a deal and say, hey, listen, if we produce X amount of barrels of oil a day for the next 10 years, it's going to be very profitable. Well, they can't maintain those numbers. I see it over and over again, okay? It's very difficult to find a driller that has their own rig, and because if you don't have your own rig, you're just not going to be profitable in these times. It's very difficult. And if you don't have access to materials at a good price, and if you don't have the ability to find good leases, and because if you're in Texas and you're having to pay very high rates to lease an area, because Texas, man, they have to compete with these massive shell drillers, Oklahoma and different parts. And so it's hard to compete with these massive shell guys because they pay these massive amounts of money because they have it. They have all this stock capital. And so it's pushing out all the small guys. So the small guys are being pushed out. The small guys are not disciplined. They just drill because they make money from drilling for oil. Where the bigger boys, they're capital discipline, like I explained before. And so oil ultimately output is going to decline in America. Regardless if they drill, baby drill, or they are capital discipline, it's going to decline because the shell asset is the fastest declining oil producing asset in the world. And it doesn't matter who's in office. It doesn't matter. They cannot fix the problem we have. We have a massive problem. We've built the whole world on an infinite resource, and green energy cannot save us. It cannot help us. The amount of energy that we consume, the AI demand for energy is massive. It's huge. Bitcoin mining energy demand is massive. It's huge. The smartest thing that people can do is take the natural gas that they're not able to produce, that they're not able to sell, convert that natural gas to electricity, and use that electricity to power Bitcoin miners. That would be the smartest thing in the world to do. That's actually something I'm looking into deeply. I've been looking into it for years, and that's something I'm working on. But bottom line, we have a massive issue. Energy demand is growing in a massive way, and we need all hands on deck to come up with a solution. We need fossil fuels, we need oil, we need green energy, we need every energy there is, but the most combustible energy that exists is oil. And it's inflationary proof. The day that the barrel of oil is born, it's purchased with today's dollars, no different than gold. It's sold in dollars. It's inflationary proof. It's a commodity, but then it's burned, it's gone, and we got to find it again. All right, guys, I'm Sean Pruitt, president of Kingdom Exploration. If you like this channel, please subscribe. If you're interested in learning more about oil investing, look at my description below, look at my comment section, reach out to me. I'd love to chat with you, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.